Welcome everybody to Let's Do Lunch on Monday, the business of streaming. You will of course have noticed that this is not Ned Sherman. Ned couldn't be with us to do the intro today. I think he's off getting things ready for the LA Games Conference, which is on May 9th through 11th. So if you haven't already, you should probably sign up for that. It's going to be a fascinating discussion. As usual, we have a fascinating discussion on Let's Do Lunch, streaming, the business of streaming today. And I want to encourage you to first introduce yourself on the chat, let everybody know that you're there. And also, if you have questions for me or Ari Evans, please put them in the Q&A window. I'll have that open as we go. And I'll be keeping a weather eye on that. If I can slot your question in during the discussion, I certainly will. But we will have, as usual, a Q&A section at the end. So stick around for that. Okay, so let's get to it, shall we? So I'd like to introduce Ari Evans. He is CEO and co-founder of Maestro. Ari, welcome.
Hey, Colin, thanks for having me.
Great. It's another week, and I wanted to we're going to have a great conversation about interactivity, shoppable ads, and all of that. But first of all, I want you to give you a chance to introduce Maestro. Tell us about that, and maybe a little bit about you as well.
Absolutely. So Maestro is all about this big change that's happening. You know, we're here talking about the business of streaming, and the business of streaming is growing tremendously. In fact, there are some reports that are about to hit that are basically going to say that video businesses are probably going to be the biggest category of businesses, small businesses on the planet very soon. So Maestro's objective is to help people make more money with video. We do this for major enterprises like Epic and Apple and Microsoft, and big stars like Billie Eilish and Lady Gaga, and then a ton of other smaller creators who you may or may not have heard of. So we're doing book clubs, working with chefs, working with vloggers, comedians, all kinds of different classes of people who are just trying to make money with video. And we do that by adding interactivity to the stream, making it easy to do things like shoppable video, which we're going to talk about, ticketing, subscriptions, a lot of this like direct monetization strategy for consumers. So think of it kind of like Shopify in the video space.
Great. So I have been, I think, involved in interactivity for maybe 2 or 3 decades now, at least 25 years, I think. So that's a pretty long time. But we do seem to be having a bit of a moment, don't we, with shoppable ads for MCU, pushing them very hard. We have interactivity taking place on streaming services like Netflix with Cat Burglar and Quiz Time and IMDb TV interactive ads. So we do seem to be having a bit of a moment. So what the heck is going on? Why are we having all of this activity?
That's a great question. Interactivity is part of the problem is that word means a lot. And what it means, actually, the real use cases of it are expanding over time. So I think as the video ecosystem evolves, you're seeing different categories and verticals want something different for what they need from interactivity. Let's take sports for an example, right? Now that betting is becoming legalized in the US, all of a sudden the live betting within a stream thing starts to become interesting there, right? Shoppable video, we're seeing what's happening in China. Tens of billions of dollars being generated. It's actually one of the dominant forms of commerce in that part of the world. And so in the US and in this hemisphere, this part of the world, we are looking at that and saying, okay, how do we unlock that same transactional volume over here? So these are just 2 trends, but there are many in all these different categories of how people want to interact with audiences and how much money they want to make. And I think there's just this like Renaissance moment happening.
Do you think maybe it's got something to do with the fact that suddenly the audiences are now available on interactive platforms? That's the first thing. So, now pretty much everybody is streaming. But more than that, it's that there are free services that they can consume with ads. And now those are catching on because the audiences are there. Is it simply just because the audiences are there and they're on an interactive platform?
You know what? Absolutely. So where people are consuming is mostly through the internet. And well, in general, that it's shifting much more in that direction. And also the teams that are creating content are also producing in an internet first way, meaning a lot of the content in these shows are being designed and developed with the idea that somehow interactivity is going to be part of their show and of their content in some way, so that there is that two-way interaction with the audience. The reason why this is compelling to them is because all the metrics show that when you add these layers into the experience, people watch longer, they come back more regularly, they spend more money. So all the main signals you want to see, you see them when you add interactivity to your broadcast. So those are some of the things that are going on. And we see many different examples of this in different places. Sometimes your content is all about the interactivity. For example, these QVC style live shopping shows.
Right.
The point of the content is to sell you something, right? And you take that all the way the other direction, where maybe you're attending a concert, a live stream, and then you're buying merch through that live stream experience while you're there. So there's kind of like a spectrum of these different types of experiences.
Right. And I wonder if the creator economy is also having an impact here. One of the things I see very regularly is I see folks on YouTube that I happen to be watching on TV, and that's where I watch a lot of the YouTube these days. They're telling me to do the usual things that they do, click on the next episode, like my channel, blah, blah, blah. So do you think maybe that is spilling over also into more traditional media because we're getting used to doing it with the creator economy videos?
Yeah, so the creator economy is really exploding, and part of what's happening is that the tools that are being built for the creator economy are getting to a point where a lot of really amazing things can be built by one person, two people. And so you're kind of seeing this merging from two different directions, kind of the enterprise kind of becoming more consumery in their experiences, and the consumery side becoming a little bit more prosumer, if you will, or in the direction of enterprise. We kind of sit at the intersection of those two things. Part of our objective is to make the tooling as easy as possible so that you're not worried about technology, and all you're focused on is, what do I want my experience to be, and how do I want to interact and make money from it with the audience? So, and we're not the only company, of course, doing that. There are many. So yes, the creators are definitely pushing this forward in a big way.
So let's explore that a little bit, and talk to us a little bit about what the opportunities are for content creators to innovate in the way they monetize their content and bring value to their viewers.
Yeah, so a lot of the modern strategy is revenue diversification, right? Meaning more ways to make money in layman's terms. And so part of that is realizing that the YouTubes and the Twitches and these aggregator platforms of the world are amazing, but there are opportunities to think more about your audience in segments. So for example, you have your casual viewers, and then you have your core audience. And then for the core audience, how can you develop something unique for them that's premium, that they will pay a premium for? Because that's a lot of money that's being left on the table. When you use a platform that's mainly supported by ads, then every person is essentially equivalent because you're paid on a per impression or view basis. But when you start to do things like ticketing, like private streams that are ticketed, or a subscription-based model for some premium things that maybe you do once a week or once a month, then you start capturing a totally additive revenue stream. Maybe you do something like the next time you're going to drop a new piece of merchandise, you do it on a stream, or you do it behind, like in a more private environment where people have to pay to get into that, right? The exclusivity, we do this in person all the time. Like at a sporting event, you wouldn't just have everyone be GA. You have GA, you have your VIP, and then you have multiple tiers of VIP up above that, right? So there's an opportunity to bring that into the digital space. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of this going.
This is one of the things that I think is so surprising to me, that there's been such a focus, particularly in the premium video market, on subscriptions. And subscriptions do two things. One is that they value all of the subscribers the same, but two, they value all of the content the same, right? And that just doesn't make sense, right? Because some content is just inherently more value, as you just pointed out.
Absolutely. I mean, we tell the story about it's kind of an analogy from the music space, but when Spotify first came out, the music industry was up in arms about it, because we used to have people going into a record store or CD store and buying a bunch of different CDs, and then that would naturally show people spending different amounts of money for their interest in music. Then we took all of that and we made it a all-you-can-eat buffet with the lobster and top shelf liquor and everything you want for like $12 a month. And all of a sudden, though it has been wonderful for the music industry and certainly for the consumer, artists in that space stand to make more money if they, let's say before you put your music on Spotify, you do like a private listening party with some fans, which is like a paid experience, or you do like, meet and greet, first listen, Q&A session. And you should charge more money for that. I'm not talking about $5, $10. You should be charging like $100, $200, $300 for this. In a physical event, you would charge that kind of money for a special wristband. Why aren't we doing that digitally?
So you've actually been working with people that have been doing this with their music and with their acts. Talk us through a couple of the examples. You mentioned Billie Eilish. I'd love to hear what she's up to and give us some very concrete examples.
Sure. So with Billie Eilish, during the pandemic, she did a live stream concert, which was $30. And it was a super unique XR type of activation that she did with us. They had the ability to purchase merch through the stream. The whole thing was visually groundbreaking. It's worth checking out. I'm not even sure where it's available, but it was super, super unique. And that was her way to basically deal with the fact that she had to cancel her entire global tour. So this is a multi-million-dollar revenue outcome for her and for her team. And it was also something super unique and artistic for her fans. And then we saw something similar we did in the music space with 21 Pilots, where they were doing an album release. And the way they did this was a 6-week activation, if you will, where you paid $20 that gets you access to multiple different streams. Some of them were like a music video debut. Some of them were a trivia night or a Q&A night. And it was all culminating in a big Broadway style production, which was like the main live stream event at the very end. So your one ticket got you access to as much of this as you wanted to participate in. And similarly there, it was, merch and ticketing were the two primary revenue drivers for those activations. Since then, we've also done like an MMA pay-per-view type of experience and, all kinds of other things where people are just discovering that you can actually make money from even a smaller audience, maybe more money than you would have made from a bigger audience with traditional advertising-based models.
So talk us through some of the options that people can use to layer into the experience to increase that value and to make, first of all, to make ticket holders who've come in to see an event enjoy it more, but also to allow you to begin to differentiate between the people that want to spend a little bit more with you.
Sure. So let's take one of our customers, Tom Segura, for example, which is in the like sports talk show space. Well, it's more just like comedy talk show, but there's a bunch of sports stuff in there. This is a podcast that about once a month, they do a special video podcast, which is a ticketed live event. And they also make it available as an on-demand video thereafter. So one of the things that happens in these environments is that since you have something like the chat active, the people involved in the show can be like interacting with the audience, mentioning them by name, taking questions from them during the broadcast. It's not dissimilar from what we would be doing here with a Q&A. And or like when people used to call into a radio show, it's kind of the same thing, just brought into this live stream context. So it's a combination of offering things that are exclusive, the content itself being exclusive, and creating that engagement, whether it's like a trivia game, for example. We do that with Fortnite. And then there's a leaderboard with points that you can kind of get that social status on. Or if it's something that's like truly private behind a paywall, like some of these other activations I've been talking about, there's just this wide diversity of leveling up the experience for your core audience, which I think is like at the heart of this whole strategy.
Now, is there a particular type of content this works best with, or can you put it in pretty much anything?
That's a great question. We think that modern creators are going to think more about what is your free content strategy and what is your premium content strategy. Technically, anything can be premium, but what we find works best is if it's either, super mega produced, like the Billie Eilish concert was just like, whoa, right? Clearly a lot of money went into producing that really spectacular visual experience. And then on the other end of the spectrum is highly interactive and intimate experiences, right? The goal is to have a 20-person or 10-person meet and greet type of experience, which is really intimate. And those are types of things that people also will pay a lot of money for because they want access.
Yeah.
One of the other categories we've seen many times is, and especially today, I think a lot of society just really values that like authentic display of you doing your craft, whatever your craft might be. So in some cases, we see people doing like sort of behind the scenes, just turn on the camera while I'm doing my craft, while I'm writing a song, while I'm designing something, while I'm coding something, while I'm whatever it is, while I'm cooking something, and having people just get exposed to the thing that they're passionate about and the thing that they have a talent in. If you're a super fan, you want that more than the finished product. You want to see how it's made, how it's done.
Okay. Is the production of the interactive features very difficult to add in? Is it something that you need to plan up front from the very beginning? Tell us about the ecosystem for the creation and delivery of the experiences, along with the just the straight video.
Sure. The short answer is it depends, right? It depends greatly on what is the content. If we're talking about those Netflix style shows that you were mentioning, then yeah, I think at the very beginning, if it's choose your own adventure, you need to really be cognizant of, draw a diagram of how your story plays out and what all the interactions are going to be along that journey. But there's a lot more simplistic ways to add interactivity to your stream. What we find is that like what we're trying to do is make those tools as simple as possible so that you can like slowly layer up, but there's a large degree of mastery that you can assume over time. So as an example, if you want to just start polling your audience and having them feel the pulse of the crowd, that's quite simple to do, like using our technology, for example. If you want to add shopping, maybe there's one or two call outs during your stream where you want to sell a specific piece of merchandise. Well, all you have to do is install our Shopify app and you can start selling content or start selling your physical products. And I think that's what you're seeing a lot more in general with the tooling out there. It's like, hey, how can I just connect other tools that I use together and then just easily layer these things on? Now, some of the more complicated ones are like live stats overlays for sports and some of those use cases. That's also getting a lot better as the APIs improve. It kind of just depends on exactly what you want to do, but lately a lot of it can be turnkey.
So is there support for the synchronous streaming of the data with the video? That's all in place. That's not something that we have to worry about.
It has come a long way in the last couple of years. So there's a couple things happening at the same time. First is low latency at scale is starting to show real promise. Like for WebRTC and other similar technologies, there's a bunch of companies that are really nailing that. So when you get the latency down low enough, you don't really have to worry about the sync problem as much, right? If you're within 2 seconds, well, that's probably fine, right? And to make it even better, now there's time code for live streaming. So you can make it frame accurate, right? Like person catches football, touchdown overlay comes up, right? Like that is something you can actually do completely programmatically if you have the right data coming in. So things have come a really far way with that. And then for on demand, you can just timestamp into the video when you want things to happen.
Yeah. Sports seems like a very rich vein for interactive experiences, right? That's when people do want to grab the latest stats. They do want to see another play from another game that has bearing on this one. Are you working a lot in sports?
There's a good amount of stuff going on in sports with us. We're finding the most success with the mid-tier of sports leagues where they, maybe can't afford the top of the end solutions where the biggest, like the top 4 sports leagues use. And they're finding, because they want to be just like those guys and they need a solution that is more cost effective, that they can still, that looks polished and professional. So yeah, we're seeing some success there. And we also do a lot in esports as well, which has adopted, esports has been interactive since day one because it was kind of being streamed on Twitch to begin with. But you're going to see this everywhere. You're going to just see different types of layers of interactivity in most live streams that you watch. It's not so much about just, what can people watch? And it's more about what can they do while they watch, especially these days when attention, keeping your attention is a difficult thing, right? Like our attention spans are going down. So to the extent you can keep me engaged over time, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to watch longer. I'm going to tell my friends to come check this out, right? Like there needs to be those opportunities. Social itself is a whole dimension of exploration, right? I'll give you some very concrete examples. Chat is obviously super table stakes these days. Most experiences have it. Yeah, we have a chat right here on this webinar we're having here. But if you take things a little further, in the shoppable video, right? Let's say you were watching a shopping ad. One thing is you can just buy from the ad, but what if you could also see when someone else has just bought from that ad, like their little profile image just appears and floats off the screen, and you can kind of see this behavior that's happening. Or let's say that we're going back to that sports example, and I can just see that my friend just placed this bet. Maybe I can copy his bet, right? His or her bet. So there's this social layer as well that I think we're really just barely scratching the surface of what's going to happen there to make these experiences feel, even if we're all like on our couches by ourselves, and certainly during the pandemic, we felt this a lot more. There's a way to feel like we're all hanging out together watching this show. I think you're going to see a lot more there.
Yeah. I just want to remind you, if you have a question for Ari, he's a great resource. If you want to figure out how to employ interactivity, maybe in your content type, it's a great time to ask him that question, or where he sees the business going. Now, we've talked a little bit about the shoppable ad opportunities, and NBCU has been talking a lot about this opportunity. And I will tell you that I'm quite impressed with their implementation. It seems to me that their implementation solves a lot of the problems that we had with interactive buying before. Of course, we've been talking forever about buying Jennifer Aniston's sweater during Friends, and turned out nobody really wanted to do it. But there was some issues with that. I'm really interested in your opinion on, is shoppable ads real this time? Will people actually start to buy it? And if so, why? What's the big difference between now and say 10 years ago or 15 years ago when we were doing this on cable systems?
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball on the answer to this question just yet, particularly in the West right now. But I'm personally not super bullish on, there's been a lot of companies that have done clickable hotspots to buy this item while you're watching a show. I don't think we've seen that really take off, to your point. Shoppable ads are very interesting. I'm not sure that it's going to have the success that everyone's really hoping for, at least short term. If we're looking at China as an example, what works best there is it is this social selling element. You're actually buying someone else's product through a human. They're like, either trying the thing on and showing it to you, talking about it with you. It's a lot more QVC style, but just on an individual live streamer basis. And that is very popular and successful. So if I'm just seeing a generic ad that is about a product and I'm going to buy the product from it, will there be some sales from it? I think yes, absolutely. And I think the simpler we make it, the more sales there will be for that. I think certain types of products will sell better, like utility products, I think will be a great example of this, or like CPG products probably, where we're like, oh yeah, I do need more laundry detergent. Let me just buy that right now from this ad, right? I'm not sure high priced items are going to be purchased that way. I doubt it. What do you think?
So it sounds to me like the relationship with the seller is really critical here, right? So an environment where this might work really well is, say, on Amazon. And I have seen interactive ads on IMDb TV, I know, for doable, consumer stuff that you might just purchase.
Well, Amazon Live, that
Yeah,
exists for this very reason.
right.
They're now you can be an Amazon Live streamer. That's a thing now.
So that seems to be critical, right? But does that mean that somebody like a Roku or Apple is really not going to make any headway in the business?
I'm personally very curious to see what kind of moves they're going to make.
Yeah,
I'm sure they got to be thinking about it, but nothing's been announced. Ultimately, though, I think you're going to see a lot of e-commerce in the world continue to shift to this direction where, that's kind of how we buy things already, right? There's what the strongest type of marketing is word of mouth marketing, even today.
Yeah.
And if there's someone who you trust and their opinions and they recommend something to you, you're much, much more likely to purchase it. So this is just that, right? Like whether it's an influencer who you really admire or follow, or someone else who just you trust their opinion, they're an expert by whatever that means on the topic. I think that's going to be one of the most powerful ways for you to make a buying decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me like that shoppable ads very clearly have solved a couple of the problems that we had before. So one was, well, we were operating in standard def mode, and to get the ad up, you basically had to take the whole screen over, which is a problem if you're watching live TV.
Right.
So I think that's been solved with shoppable ads. They don't do that. They don't take over the whole screen. I'm just wondering if there's another advantage they can bring with targeting, so that I get the shoppable ad I see is more appropriate for me anyway. And doesn't that kind of mean I'm much more likely to click on and interact and buy?
Absolutely. Without a doubt, that's something that we can't do we really can't do on TV really at all. Well,
Yep.
We can on, connected apps primarily, but certainly we can bring to bear the full, profiling or targeting capabilities that we have on ads today in that context. And when you use Maestro, you have user profiles where they're starting to collect their behavior. What types of things do they watch? What types of things have they purchased? And then, soon we're rolling out tags on accounts. So like you can say, hey, if someone does this action, tag their account this way. And then I can use those tags to target those people when they're watching sometime later. Right. But even some of the most primitive examples, like show them, a men's outfit versus a women's outfit, or something unisex, depending on what makes sense for your context. Right. Or if their purchase behavior, like if you know what team they're a fan of, don't show them the other team's jersey to buy. Right. These are some basic examples, but that's where we are. Right. That's where we are. We're like cracking some of the simple stuff right now.
Yeah. And that was some of the stuff that you just couldn't do before. So that's obviously a big differentiator. So in the last few minutes here, let's talk about the future. So you're talking a lot with content providers about the sort of things that they want to do. What sort of things are they asking you to do that is sort of stretching the bounds of what we see with normal interactivity and shoppability? To talk to us a little about some of those extended features that they're looking for now.
Behind the scenes, so the technology really has come a long way in enabling a lot of these new types of use cases. But let's just take shopping, for example, right? A long time ago, we started by building our own e-commerce tools. That was not the right call. Then we started to say, let's just integrate everyone else's tools. So let's integrate Shopify and BigCommerce and the next three companies. Well, that was straightforward-ish, took some work. But now we're to the point where you might want to connect multiple stores to the same viewing experience. And that opens the door to affiliate sales. Like maybe this stream segment, you want to sell Sephora's merchandise. So you have to have Sephora's store connected. And then this other segment, you're going to have some other, it could be a completely different e-commerce platform powering that transaction, but it needs to all be seamless within the same watch experience. And the purchase activity or the user experience around purchasing and checkout also needs to be the same, right? So that doesn't confuse the user. So that's kind of just describing one element of what's going on right now, which is, starting to do these more complex. We're trying to add more complexity, but make it much simpler for the user at the same time. And then I think the other just general category is just how can there be more diversity in the experiences for different types of fans? So like before the stream, after the stream, what type of experiences do you have there? Who are they for? How much do they cost? How are you monetizing them?
And so one of the things that we didn't talk about was the expense in doing this. Is it very expensive to add the interactivity and shoppability in to the ads and the products?
I think that the tech is becoming less of a barrier and the challenge is more on the user experience side. You don't want to bother people, but you do want to make it contextual and relevant and very convenient for them when they want it. So, and sometimes you might get some explicit, them telling you like, hey, please don't show stuff like this anymore. But in other cases, you should be able to glean that from their behavior, right? And just tailor the experience automatically to them. So that's where like machine learning and other things like that come into play in this context, right? How can you have an algorithm determine, like, let's say some real world event happens. Like I'll go back to sports for a second, just because it's easy, like a touchdown being scored. You know, right now a human sits on a machine and they press a button to put a graphic up on the broadcast. But what if that was being done by an algorithm? It figures out how to split up the audience based on your previous behavior, how you like to interact. Are you a social? Do you have friends watching with you? What is that experience? Do you have prior purchase behavior? Are you opted into the betting experience or in a country or state where that is legal? And then the algorithm decides like, okay, when this thing happens, I'm going to present you this particular call to action. And the call to action is going to know you, right? So this is like a layer of interactivity that's hyper personalized to you, which is definitely going to increase some metric that, you know, the brand cares to maximize. And that'd be really hard for a human to do in real time. I mean, impossible, frankly.
Yeah. That seems very possible and very plausible that we could do that, right?
We can.
Yeah, go ahead.
We absolutely can. It's just, how do you make it easy enough for the producers to produce that way and for the consumer to consume that way?
Yeah. And I know that one of the things that Maestro's been expending a lot of effort is in making this self-serve, right? This is a do-it-yourself thing now. You can actually add the interactivity. You don't have to have somebody at Maestro author this. You can do it yourself, right?
That's right. So in November, we launched the self-service version of our product, and it's been awesome to see people building really incredible experiences in their first hour or two of learning our software. And that's really the direction we want to go, is just more power to anyone trying to add interactivity to their stream.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so let's do a little bit of audience Q&A, and if we can put the poll up now, please, Emma, that would be great. So while we're chatting about the questions, we will you please answer the poll questions. Don't you answer them though, Ari. We'll stay focused here. So Laura Martin asks a very interesting question. She says, when you describe social sharing of what your friends are buying or betting on, how do privacy regulations tie into that vision of the future? And actually, I wanted you to spend a couple of minutes more talking about this idea of social buying, because I really like this idea. I think it's a really powerful one. So just reiterate a little bit what that is and then talk about the privacy concerns.
Sure. So social buying as a premise in general is, in the simplest form, just having a visual representation of activity, purchase behavior happening, either from people you know or potentially even people you don't. Now, certainly, you know, I liken this to Venmo, right? Venmo has a public feed of, you know, and you can publish your transaction in a public way, or you can define the privacy really with two settings. It's just people, either the person I just interacted with and only us, or friends of each of us, or public, right? So you have three options there. I see something very similar taking place in this kind of context where you can just define like, hey, I don't want everyone knowing about the things I'm buying. And you turn that off. Some people do. Right? Some people want to showcase that they're the one making that transaction, and they don't mind if their little profile image pops up. It might not have a name. It might just be a profile image and that's it. Right? Or maybe if it's somebody who you know, their name comes up, right? So then you know that it's a friend of yours, and there's some way to differentiate that. So I think it's just a matter of making the settings simple. But the benefit on the other side is, again, just we are creatures who like to do what our friends do a lot of the time. And if we think our friend thinks this thing is cool, maybe we'll also think it's cool and want to buy it or want to engage with it somehow.
Are you covertly telling us we're all sheep?
Myself included. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I'm sure it's true for me as well. We have an anonymous attendee who wants to know about blockchain. Any thoughts on blockchain gaming, and what about the metaverse? So interactivity in those environments. It seems certainly that they're more built for that sort of thing. And that's gaming is something that you have a tremendous amount of experience in as well. So talk a little bit about that for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, oh man, tons to say here. So first of all, yeah, games are interactive by default. So these use cases fit a lot more seamlessly and naturally into those environments.
And do you see it, do you naturally see a lot more interaction with the interactive elements in that situation?
Surprisingly, not always. Let's take, for example, the concerts that have taken place in Fortnite or Roblox, right? Mostly, I mean, Fortnite is a really amazing example because they're kind of creating a more artistic thing that's happening in the world, and your avatar is not even interacting in that world. You are in the world and you're moving around in it and kind of controlling your viewpoint on it. Then we also have a customer like Wave XR. What they do is they take musical artists and they put motion capture suits on them, and they perform live as an avatar in a virtual world, right? And in that case, they do a lot of really cool interactive things. If you're in the chat, maybe the chat message appears above your avatar in the world. You can also purchase cosmetics for the artist to wear. Like you can change the jacket they're wearing. You can make lasers fly out of their eyeballs, and all that costs money. All that stuff is possible without blockchain. I do think that there is a lot of potential value in blockchain. Like I went to a party the other day where I had to be a holder of a certain NFT to attend the party, right? So that's interesting. Some of these, I know this is all over the place, just there's so much emergence of new behavior here. We're seeing like Roblox streams sometimes get streamed out of that into more of a 2D type context. So if you're not playing the game, you can still watch the concert that's happening inside of Roblox. And then you have this new technology called pixel streaming, which is basically a way for you to be in a virtual world without a very good machine. So like they can take the pixels out of Unreal Engine and stream that to you, and you can kind of control your character in that virtual space, even though it's on a stream. It's really interesting tech. So my opinion on streaming in the metaverse is, I think there's a big use case there of streaming things out of the metaverse to expose them to people to become interested, right? Like one of the stats that we saw from music a long time ago, people who watch live streams are like 60% more likely to buy a ticket to a show, like a physical event, right? So it is a marketing vehicle that's very important for these communities to flourish and showcase the strength of those communities. But there's so much to say on this topic. It's just the early days.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've no doubt Digital Media Wire will be having their first metaverse conference. Maybe later this, maybe next year. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for Ned and Tinza. Anyway, let's take a look at the poll results and see what people had to say. I asked, have you engaged with a shoppable ad? And it seems like 30% said that they had, and half said that they haven't noticed any shoppable or interactive ads. That to me is not a surprise. In the streams that I've been watching, like IMDb TV, certainly not. It's few of the ads are enabled for that, right? Is that, do you think this data is about right, Ari, or are people just not noticing them?
I think this is right on what I would have expected.
Yeah. Okay. I asked, have you engaged with interactive entertainment? So this is, things like cat burglar, etc. And it looks like 30% have. It looks like those who started basically finished. So that's encouraging. There was some, there was 30% that said they did, but they didn't complete it. And the rest, no, I haven't seen, but are interested, but they aren't interesting to me. And just again, 30% hadn't seen. So it's kind of all over the place there with even with the interactive stories so far, right?
Yeah, I think this also just captures the diversity of what human interests are, right? Like you might want your experience to be passive. That's okay. That's why we call it lean back. It's a lean back experience,
Yep.
right? And then you're seeing an increasing opportunity for there to be a lean forward experience. And some people are opting into that. And not all lean forward experiences are created equal.
No.
Right? You might be a lean forward person in one type of content and a lean back person in other types of content. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing in the third question, which is I asked, what is the biggest barrier? And people see viewer apathy. This is people just want to watch. They don't want to interact at the right time. I am fascinated, though, with the shifting attitudes that I think social video is bringing to connected TV as we watch that type of video there more and more. I think that could be a game changer.
I think the bottom line is it has to be compelling. It has to add something to your experience, something meaningful to your experience. A lot of this stuff is, I think, kind of a nice to have, but not super material. Like if your watch experience is really about, beating your friend out in your betting, or you integrate your fantasy team and because fantasy has this like competitive element built into it, or you are doing a watch party with someone for a new episode where you and them can't watch together, but like the watch together feature becomes the main reason why you're using whatever application it is, then these things start to become core to your experience, right? In Twitch and in the gaming space, I don't think anyone can imagine watching gaming streams without chat anymore. That's like now just completely intermingled. And I think you're going to see that more and more over time. Different types of use cases. Like you can't have a shoppable QVC style show without the shopping component built into it, right? Some of these pieces are just, you're like HQ trivia. You couldn't have HQ trivia without the trivia component.
Right.
So it's, now we're going to see these live experiences where the interactivity is core to what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that you're right, and we'll have you back to tell us a little bit more and see if we've progressed in a year or two. This has been fascinating, Ari. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for having me. This was great.
And thank you, audience, for your great questions and your comments in the chat window. We would love you to join us for the LA Games Conference on May 9th to the 11th. So make sure you sign up for that. And we will see you again next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.